I'd like to welcome to the podium one of my fellow board members, Jacqueline Jones, President and CEO of the Foundation for Child Development, who will introduce the first part of our program. Jacqueline.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce the first Phil Talks speaker for today's program, Democracy, Demographics, and Destiny, All in the Details. Pithy little title. If you've participated in previous Philanthropy New York annual meetings, you know that our Phil Talks are opportunities to hear from extraordinarily interesting individuals who are doing really essential work on a topic of the day. In the past, we've done them rapid fire, one right after the other. But this year, we're mixing things up a bit and interspersing these talks throughout the day. So over drinks this evening, you can give us feedback on how well you think that's worked. Now, our first Phil Talks presenter. Today, we will be exploring a broad set of ideas about how to effect the fair representation and active participation of all people living in our country, especially those who face systemic barriers to really exercising their power. Young people must be considered in this conversation. They are sometimes written off, they are sometimes the object of political marketing, and sometimes considered to be in need of better education to even understand civics. Remember civics education? There is now a new form of action civics growing in schools across America, a new way of tapping into young people's own knowledge, their lived experiences, and their enthusiasm for change. They're fostering their own civics education to make real change in communities. We are very fortunate to have with us today DeNora Getachew, the New York Executive Director of Generation Citizen. Please join me in welcoming DeNora Getachew.
Oh, you did it. That's great. Thank you, Jacqueline, for that generous introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is DeNora Getachew, and I'm the New York Executive Director of Generation Citizen. I am an overzealous advocate for democracy and a mother of 3. Generation Citizen is a 9-year-old national nonprofit focused on empowering the next generation of civically engaged leaders. We do that by partnering with middle and high schools nationwide, here in New York, but also in Massachusetts, in Rhode Island, where we were founded on Brown University's campus, in Oklahoma and Texas, in Northern and Southern California, and in Camden, New Jersey as well. We go into schools twice weekly during in-class time to implement a new, exciting pedagogy and curriculum we call Action Civics. Our goal is to empower the next generation of civically engaged leaders. We know that the reason that our democracy is having such a crisis in this moment, a civic reckoning, if you will, is because we failed to educate young people about democracy and how it works. And so that's the reason that our co-founder and CEO, Scott Warren, created Generation Citizen when he was a student at Brown University. At a time when young people and adults, for that matter, were turning out in record numbers in 2008 to elect the first African-American president, he realized that they were not turning out in similar levels at the local level where real decision-making is happening to impact our daily lives. And so today, I'm going to talk to you about Action Civics and its power to bring equity into our democracy, to ensure that the new American majority can take their rightful seat at the table. Do you know this woman? I bet you don't. But I bet if I put a picture of the students from Parkland up on the screen, you would know all of them. That's the problem. Our democracy cannot be just for certain voices. All voices have to be elevated. This is Ruba. She is a self-described 19-year-old hijabi Muslim girl. She is an American. Ruba is like most students who enter our classrooms skeptical about their ability to affect change. But then, once she realized that she could make her voice heard to advocate for policing reform, to ensure that all police officers wore body cameras, she realized that Action Civics was no longer a laughing matter. Ruba is the present and the future of our democracy. Working with students like Ruba, who are, reckless young people, spend more time on Snapchat applying dog filters to their photos than they do engaging in advocacy. But once they get that core civic knowledge and skills, once they find their voice, they realize that they can take Action Civics beyond the classroom. And that's what she did. She realized that #MeToo wasn't just a movement for Hollywood, and so she advocated for more open discussions about sexual assault in her local mosques. Ruba, like I said, is the present and future of our democracy. We know that America has a participation problem. Do we want to be a democracy where not all voices matter? I would say to you that we don't. Part of the problem is structural in nature, not to get in the way of the photo. Part of the problem is also that we haven't empowered people and educated them about how democracy works. These numbers are not surprising, but they should be a call to action. The fact that young people did not turn out in the presidential election when they made up the second largest voting bloc in our country in 2016 is a problem for our democracy. When you combine 18 to 29-year-olds with people of color and unmarried women, they make up the new American majority. They are now the largest voting bloc in America, surpassing boomers. If we cannot get them to understand that their voices matter, we have a real problem with our democracy. The numbers are even more startling at the local level. One, New York ranked 41st in the nation for voter turnout in 2016. I'm a native New Yorker, and I'm embarrassed by that fact. But even worse at the local level, 22% of eligible New York City residents thought that they should vote to elect the mayor, citywide elected officials, and city council members. People who have passed legislation and policy reform on issues like education, transportation, affordable housing. They impact our daily lives, and yet we didn't turn out to vote. That problem is even worse for young people here in New York City. 13% of them turned out to make their voices heard. It's clear that we're turning away from democracy and that we have to find solutions to address it. These numbers are startling, and I put them up here both to give us a call to action, but also to make the case. This is a midterm election year. Are the young people I just told you about, the new American majority, not going to turn out again? Are they not going to make their voices heard? It's not that they don't think they can affect change. Our young people don't think that engaging with politics is the way to do so. They're more likely to show up at a soup kitchen or start a nonprofit than they are to advocate for systemic solutions. As I said, part of that problem is structural in nature. When I was a young lawyer here in New York City, I thought that if we could advocate for all of these solutions here in New York and nationwide, that magically our democracy would be fixed. I'll just say I was young and naive. We still need all of these reforms to happen, especially number 5. Hopefully Florida will pass legislation to restore the right to vote to returning citizens. But we also need to address the civic engagement gap plaguing our underserved communities. Let me tell you more about Ruba. She is a first-generation Pakistani immigrant. She lives in an underserved community in Brooklyn. Just by virtue of those 2 facts alone, she is 50% less likely to have a conversation around her dinner table about politics or in her civics class or social studies class in the classroom. That's a problem. We are facing a civic engagement gap that is plaguing our underserved communities and weakening our democracy. We need concrete solutions to address that tide. I'm here today to tell you more about Action Civics. It is a concrete and systemic solution to empower the new American majority to engage. It is a pedagogy and a curriculum. It is an approach through which we are arming the next generation of civically engaged leaders. We start out the semester teaching young people about the issues that matter to them in their community and who are the local decision makers, state and local, so we use the word local broadly, who can impact change on those issues. We get them to do a novel exercise, build consensus about one issue that they agree about, and what can they do as a class of 12 to 19-year-olds to affect change on that issue by directly engaging with government. This is not window dressing, and nor is this schoolhouse rock. So we all grew up with it, and with all due respect, I'm just a bill on Capitol Hill doesn't resonate with a 21st century democracy, right? It just doesn't. If you can like and hug and retweet things on the internet, you are not going to say that I'm just a bill on Capitol Hill is how you're going to get civically engaged. And so our young people are proposing legislative solutions. They are advocating for budgetary funding. They are proposing youth voice be elevated in order to ensure that they can get their goal accomplished. That is the power of Action Civics to bring equity back into our democracy, to get young people from underserved communities to find their voice. And the data shows that it works. When Action Civics is in the classroom, we can measure our results through pre- and post surveys of our students, our teachers, and when we're bringing them in the classroom, college volunteers. And they all say that students are increasing their civic knowledge. They understand how government is structured and that local decision makers are there to hear from them. We're developing their civic skills. If I have a problem in my community, what can I do as an underserved young person to advocate for a proposed solution? And most importantly, we're seeing increases in their civic agency. That is powerful. 2 stats jump out to me. 1, 80% of our students say that after taking our course, they're more likely to want to vote. That's an important stat. I hope that when they're a 6th grader, that impact is still the same as when they're a 12th grader. The second stat is that 91% of our students believe that their voices matter after taking a class. So they get this core civic knowledge and skills, and then we send them out into the world, because we are not naive enough to know or believe that action civics in the classroom alone is going to empower the next generation to be civically engaged. So we're giving them that set of skills in the classroom and launching them out into the world to continue their civic engagement journey. Two of these from this toolkit jumps out to me. We created this because we all get caught up in this notion of voting. So I started off by talking about how few of us are voting. That is one act on the civic engagement spectrum. We need to be doing all of these steps and more every day. And we are, many of us. But we need our young people to know that they can engage in conversations with people they disagree with, because we aren't just training slacktivists who can like that stuff on the internet. They actually have to do something. Right? I think we all get in our silos where if I don't have the same Kool-Aid on tap in my house as someone else, I can unfriend them. Well, guess what? That's not what the founders had in mind when they were striving for that more perfect union. And the other is lobbying a decision maker. We have to get out of our silos and think that if we just click that button, that we've affected change. And so a class of young girls in Brooklyn realized that they just needed a common sense solution. A countdown clock at a dangerous intersection where teachers and students had been impacted by hit and runs. And so what did they do? They called up the Department of Transportation, the local decision maker, and they told them how much it would cost and gave them the data to prove why they needed it. And when they didn't hear back, this group of young ladies was so amazing, they went a step further and they called their local city council member. They said, you're on the transportation committee. It is your job to have oversight of the Department of Transportation. Did you see our letter? Can you get them to give us that countdown clock? And when that didn't happen in our 10-week-long semester, they reached out to local media. And they said, can you come to our class? Can you hear our call to action? They launched a local advocacy campaign. And I'm proud to say that shortly after our semester, they were able to achieve their goal. I don't tell you this story because I think in every Action Civics class, students are going to solve a problem in a 10-week semester. I tell you this because if we are going to create the circumstances under which the new American majority can engage in our democracy again, we have to give them that core civic knowledge and skills. And that Action Civics is an effective and concrete tool to deliver that. And so I leave you with a question today. After thanking you for your time, what can you do to empower the new American majority to participate in our democracy? Thank you.